You know, having ADHD at work is something more and more people are dealing with, and it brings up a really tricky question. Where do we draw the line between an employer managing someone's performance and discriminating against their disability? To figure that out, we're going to look at what the law says through some real-life cases.
So, just how common is this? Well, check this out. About 1 in 20 Australians has been diagnosed with ADHD. That means in pretty much any workplace you can think of, this is a conversation that's either happening or needs to happen.
And this isn't some static number that's just sitting there. The number of diagnoses has absolutely skyrocketed. We're talking a nearly 300% jump in just 1 decade. This explosion in awareness is forcing everyone, from bosses to employees, to deal with challenges that used to be kind of kept in the dark.
So this all brings us to the big, really tough question we're tackling today. Can a symptom, a literal part of your neurological condition, be the very thing that costs you your job? It's a messy legal and ethical problem, and it's being put to the test in tribunals right now. Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we're going to dive into 3 real-world tribunal cases. Each one explores that super fine line between what an employer can call misconduct and what the law protects as a disability. So let's start with our first case. And believe it or not, it all comes down to a single word: disorganized. This is the story of a woman named Nicole Hogger. So meet Nicole. By every measure, she was a total rock star at her PR firm. A real high performer. She even got a big promotion to PR account manager. But that same year, 2020, was also when she got her ADHD diagnosis, and that started to change how she understood her challenges at work.
But you know how it is. With a bigger role came bigger challenges. After her promotion, some performance issues started to pop up. Her managers said she was slipping behind, and by 2023, things got so tense that after one performance meeting, she felt like she had no other option but to resign.
And this is where things really came to a head. On one hand, you have Nicole, who argued that calling her disorganized was discrimination, pure and simple, because it was a direct shot at a known symptom of her ADHD. But on the other hand, the company said, whoa, hold on, that was just factual feedback. She was missing meetings, she was late, we were just describing the problem. So there you have it. 2 totally different stories. Was it just fair management, or was it targeted harassment? What do you think? How did the tribunal actually rule on this? Well, the tribunal actually sided with Nicole, and their reason why is super important. They found that the feedback wasn't helpful at all. It just pointed out a symptom of her disability over and over, without offering any real practical solutions. And because of that, it just ended up undermining her dignity. This all led to a finding of something called constructive dismissal. Now, this is a really key legal term you should know. It basically means the tribunal agreed that the company's behavior was so bad, so discriminatory, that it created a hostile environment. Her resignation wasn't really a choice. She was, for all intents and purposes, pushed out the door.
All right, let's jump into case number 2. This one's fascinating because it's not just about why someone was fired, but how the whole process went down.
So this is Ryan Toghill. He was a deputy store manager for the supermarket chain Lidl, and his ADHD showed up in some really specific ways, like ADHD paralysis, where you feel too overwhelmed to even start a task, and rejection sensitivity, which can make any kind of criticism feel incredibly intense. Okay, so the clash here was huge. Ryan was fired for what they called gross misconduct. He used some machinery without being authorized, which is a big safety no-no. But his argument wasn't about that. He said the disciplinary hearing itself was totally unfair and hostile, and that they made zero effort to accommodate the way his ADHD affects how he communicates. So here's the real question, right? Even if there's a legit safety breach, a serious one, does the company still have to make sure the process is fair for an employee with a disability? Does that change anything? And the tribunal's answer was a resounding yes, it absolutely does. They said, look, the misconduct was serious, sure, but the process was totally flawed. They found that Ryan's ADHD put him at a substantial disadvantage in that hearing. He couldn't focus on long speeches, and they mistook his communication style for a lack of remorse, which it wasn't. So you might be asking, okay, so what should they have done? Well, the tribunal basically gave them a checklist. They should have gotten expert advice on how to handle a hearing with someone who has ADHD. They should have offered breaks. And they needed to understand that the way he was communicating wasn't defiance, it was a symptom. These are what the law calls reasonable adjustments. But here's a really important thing to remember. Having a disability isn't a free pass for any kind of behavior.
Our third and final case is a perfect example of when a tribunal decided the employer's actions were, in fact, completely justified.
So let's talk about Brooklyn Forrester Hayes. He's a young garage apprentice, and he's had an ADHD diagnosis pretty much his whole life, since he was 5. And it's important to note that the workplace culture there was full of so-called practical jokes and banter.
And here's how quickly things went sideways. First, his colleagues mess with his lunch as a joke. He gets upset, confronts them, and then sends a bunch of threatening messages on Snapchat. And that led straight to him getting suspended and eventually fired for gross misconduct. So, again, you've got two sides. Brooklyn's argument was, hey, this was a gut reaction, totally impulsive because of my ADHD, and I was provoked. But the employer's take was very different. They said, look, our #1 job is to keep our staff safe, and these threats were so serious that we just couldn't ignore them, no matter what the reason was.
This time, though, the tribunal sided with the employer. They totally got that his impulsivity was linked to his ADHD, but they ruled that it just didn't excuse the specific and severe nature of the threats he made. They decided the dismissal was fair.
Okay, so we've just walked through 3 really different cases with 3 different results. What can we actually learn from all this? What are the big takeaways for everyone trying to figure this stuff out?
It really all boils down to 4 main things. Number 1, employers have to acknowledge a diagnosis. You can't just ignore it. 2, they have to make those reasonable adjustments, like changing how a meeting is run. 3, the process has to be fair. It's not just about the final decision. And finally, number 4, a disability is a huge factor, but it's not a free pass for serious misconduct, especially when safety is on the line.
And all of this leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. As we all become more aware of neurodiversity, are our workplaces actually changing to support people who think and work differently? Or are we just getting better at policing the symptoms? Honestly, the answer to that is going to shape the future of work for millions of people.